experiencing a very few tough years, the city of Hong Kong, as a major global financial center, is in great need of ways to boost its economy. How will the city's chief executive designate John Lee lead the economic recovery in the years to come? How will he resolve the city's long-standing social and economic problems? And how can investor confidence be built back up in Hong Kong? To discuss these issues and more, I'm honored to be joined today by Alan Zeman, longtime Hong Kong businessman and chairman of the Langley Fund Group. In the second half of the program, I will be joined by Dr. Edward Xie, founder and CEO of the Fund Advisory Company. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. Welcome to the show, Alan. So I know you have known John Lee for many years. So tell us, how do you describe John Lee as a politician?
Well, I can tell you, as a politician, this is a new thing for him. But I've known John Lee when he was police officer, and then when he was chief superintendent, and also then when he was undersecretary for security. And of course, I also served when John Lee became the chief secretary. I also served on his human resources committee, which is what the chief secretary, one of his committees. And so I've worked with John for a while now. And, John, as far as I'm concerned, is probably the perfect candidate that we can now have, the perfect chief executive coming up. We've been through a very difficult last 5 years because of the protests in 2019, because of the COVID that really hurt Hong Kong for 3 years, basically, and the Omicron now. But I think that John himself, it will be a breath of fresh air to the Hong Kong people. Many don't know him. Much of the criticism from many of the press, foreign press and other countries, oh, he's a security officer from the police force. And does that mean that now China is taking back Hong Kong and really going to stop Hong Kong as an international place? But I can tell you, John, his background being a police officer and in security, basically really is a benefit for him because policemen come to work every day. Their upbringing is one day they face a murder, the next day they face a robbery, the third day they face a quarrel between family, and they have to solve the problem. And so one thing about John, his training has been to solve problems on a daily basis. And that's every police officer, but basically that's the training, that's what they do. And basically, that's why when he first came out and he said one of the first things is very important for him is for the CE to be result oriented. We want results, something that he's been trained to do, something that I believe that will be very good for Hong Kong. Because we've had problems the last 25 years. And I think John will be someone that will surprise a lot of people. Many of the media have asked him, well, Hong Kong's an international financial center. You don't know anything about finance, do you? And so how are you going to do that? And he gave
That's what I'm going to ask, yes.
I can tell you, he had a very clever answer, which is the truth. If you look around the world, you look at presidents, you look at prime ministers, you look at chief executives around the world, no one knows everything about everything. And he said, there's only one person that knows, and that's God, And it was kind of a cheeky answer, but a good answer, because in essence, the most important thing is building a strong team around you. You can see even in the West where you have politicians who don't have a strong team with them and they fail, basically. In Hong Kong, if he builds a strong team, and being in the police force, you have to have a strong, you work on strong teams because of the security issue, because of safety, all these things. And so he's used to building strong secretaries, secretaries. That's very, very important for him. Permanent secretaries. I believe he will be able to do something like that.
Yeah, Alan, based on what you have said, years of dealing with John, working for John Lee. In terms of personality, how do you describe his working style, his governing style, and his track record? Probably that will give people more confidence.
I think what will give people more confidence will be the proof is in the pudding. So basically, he needs to prove himself. He needs to show what he's capable of. John, actually, the good thing about John, he comes out of the grassroots. He grew up in a poor house, in a housing estate. He even had a statement the other day that his family, they never had a TV. They couldn't afford a television. And later his father was able to buy a TV for the family, and they were able to get all their neighbors to come and open the door and listen to the TV. So he knows what it is to come from a poor family. And he actually joined the police force because he actually had the marks to go into Hong Kong U to become an engineer, but he decided the family needed money. And so we will go to I'll go to the police force, the probation officer to start with, and really provide some income for my family, which was very admirable. And he stayed in the police force, and you can see he worked his way up from probation officer to really a chief superintendent, and then to secretary for security. So John is very quick. He really and his methodology. Even I was told when a report comes out, he reads everything. He reads every detail, and that's basically usually police officers training. It's important that you read all the details, all the facts, in order to make decisions, and that's really done him well. And I've seen that with him. And even listen, in fairness, he only had 3.5 weeks to. Because of the May 8th date that we had to do the vote on, he really only had 3.5 weeks since the nomination committee had voted him in, and he worked so hard going out to people have subdivided flats, visiting different organizations, really getting to know people, because many people didn't know him. They knew him as chief secretary, and they thought, oh my God, security law came in, which was very controversial with many Western countries, but it's the best thing that ever happened to Hong Kong because it created stability. It brought stability to Hong Kong after all the protests that we had. And so in essence, he did a very good job in bringing that into Hong Kong, and China did a great job in really coming up with it. So I think that at the end of the day, I look forward to his style of management. He will be able to, he's a can-do person, and he will be able to surround himself with a strong team. And I've said even for the financial secretary, which is very, very important. Potentially, if we can have the same one that we've had, Paul Chan, for two terms now, there's rumors that he will continue, because there's a lot of credibility with the world. He knows the financial. They've worked with him under 2 different administrations, and he's done a good job. And so hopefully, or if not him, Hong Kong is very strong in financial services. And so we have a lot of strong people who can help John a lot.
Alan, speak of the election, of course, there's criticism that John Lee was the only candidate. People say, oh, there's evidence of erosion of Hong Kong democracy. How do you respond to that kind of criticism?
I can respond that I'm used to criticism from the Western country because that's what they do. They love to criticize in order for them to play to their audience and say how bad Hong Kong is, that we're losing our freedom. But realistically, if people understood, if those critics really understood, looked into the details, the reason why we only had a single candidate this time, because originally the way our system worked is that you have an election committee of close to 1,500 people. Now we had 1,461 election committee members who would vote for the chief executive. And the election committee is made up of different individuals from almost every trade in Hong Kong, so represents really a big part of Hong Kong. And in essence, the date for the election was May 8th. And May 8th was the final date that we could have it because in the past, if we didn't have it on May 8th, you would have to change the law. And to change the law would take many, many, many months to change the date for the election, and also get approval from Beijing, the NPC, the National People's Congress, and so we wouldn't have a chief executive until next year. In the last election, when Carrie Lam was running, there was 3 candidates, and they had 5 months to really go out and try to do debates and really talk about their platform. Now, because of the COVID, it really changed matters, because we had to delay for almost 2 months the nomination committee for a chief executive. There was actually a few other candidates that were thinking of running, but with the delay, it came down to one at the end. They dropped out, and John was left as the only candidate running. And because when finally the nomination committee was able to vote for John for nomination before the final vote, he only had 3.5 weeks to go out and really present his platform. And the problem would have been if we would have 2 or 3 other candidates, whereas in the past you had 5 months, you only had 3.5 weeks. It would have divided. You wouldn't have a chance to have a debate between candidates. It'd be very hard for them to really tell you about their platform or what they wanted, and it would have divided the vote. And we may have had a problem because the candidate needed to get 750 votes, half the amount that's needed in order for him to qualify to be successful as being named as a chief executive. If he got below that, we'd have to go back to the well and change the date of the election. So that was the reason there was only one candidate. They took China, I think, took the decision that because there's only such a short period of time and we had that May 8th deadline, no choice. And basically what they didn't understand, that was the right decision. And so, and I think that they also understand that the candidate, they have a lot of confidence in John Lee. Obviously, they made him the chief secretary 6 months ago. So they already had, I believe that he was on their radar screen. And so those countries that want to criticize, I think they should do their homework and their research first before they criticize. It sounds very good. We only have one candidate, but there's reasons for that. And it was the right decision to take. And they probably would have done the same thing in their country if they had the same system as Hong Kong.
The same special situation, kind of. I know that you were born in Germany and raised in Canada. You were back and forth to Hong Kong in the 1970s. Finally, you decided to settle down in Hong Kong. Obviously, you had confidence. Can I say you also have confidence in the future of Hong Kong?
Well, I continue to have confidence in the future of Hong Kong. Listen, in 2008. I decided to, because I'd seen China. I'd been in China for 45 years, doing business with China. I was in a trading company, supply chain management. I built up the 2nd largest company in Hong Kong at the time. And my first journey into China was to Changsha, Hunan. I had my first office in Changsha, Hunan 45 years ago when China was very different than it is today. I watched the changes taking place in China over the 45 years that I was there. And I really grew to be very confident, understanding the system and understanding the misinterpretation of many of the Western countries who really didn't understand what China was going through and how China was evolving. My staff in China, many of them had a better life than Hong Kong. And so I changed my passport. I had a Canadian passport and I gave up my Canadian passport in 2008 and became Chinese. I had a Chinese passport. And today I travel with a Chinese passport. And it's something that I'm very proud of because I have seen the changes. The biggest problem with many of the Western countries, they really have never been to China. They don't understand what is going on. Hong Kong's strength will continue. China is 1.4 billion people. Hong Kong is 7.5 million people. Hong Kong is the super connector between the West and the East and the West. And because our independent judiciary, our international, our legal system, independent judiciary and our common law system, this is something that is very important to Hong Kong, which remains. And so the world needs Hong Kong. China needs Hong Kong because everybody is here because we are doing business in China. That's the reason. And as China grows, Hong Kong will grow. They don't want another Chinese city of 7.5 million people. They have 1.4 billion people. It wouldn't make sense to them. Hong Kong with one country, two systems really makes a lot of sense to them to keep it the way we are. And in future, we're talking about the Greater Bay Area for Hong Kong and 11 cities within 1.5 hour radius from Hong Kong, 84 million people, GDP last year of 1.67 trillion US dollars, bigger than South Korea GDP. So that's the future of Hong Kong. I mean, it's really got a very, very bright future. As China grows, Hong Kong will grow. And no matter what, I've seen the ups and the downs of people criticizing, and I've been through every kind of thing. But at the end, I know Hong Kong always comes back strong.
Well, thank you, Alan. Thank you for speaking with us. Hong Kong's GDP decreased 4% in the first quarter after the Omicron surge, worse than forecasts. How worried should we be? Is this a temporary drop, or could the city be slipping back into a recession? To find out more for this part of the program, I'm joined by Dr. Edward Xie, founder and CEO of Gaofeng Advisory Company. Welcome to the show, Edward. So I think my question starts with the economic growth, in particular for the first quarter of Hong Kong, is 4% negative. So are we going to see Hong Kong's economy will bottom out and come back under the John Lee, the new chief executive?
Yeah, the first quarter this year has been pretty tough for Hong Kong, mostly because of the pandemic, but also because of the uncertainty in the macro environment in other parts of the world. I would expect that, with the coronavirus situation in Hong Kong settling down slowly, that the second quarter number will improve quite significantly compared to the first quarter number, and that Hong Kong will gradually get out from the pretty difficult economic situation that we've seen in the last couple of quarters.
And there's a sense that, with this successful election and with the winning of John Lee, the confidence has been revitalized in Hong Kong that the city will regain stability and prosperity. So what's your expectation?
That's true. In general, the feeling in Hong Kong now, with the election of Mr. John Lee has been pretty positive. Actually, I say in general, the overall mood of the city have changed a lot because just several weeks ago when we were very deep in the pandemic situation, I say the mood in Hong Kong was pretty down, actually. But with the improvement of the pandemic situation, and then if the clarity that we're going to have a new chief executive, in general, the mood in Hong Kong is improved a lot. There's a lot of expectation from the Hong Kong people on Mr. John Lee, because over the last several years, with the social unrest back in '99, and then the pandemic situation, I think in general, Hong Kong people has been pretty disillusioned with how the Hong Kong administration have handled the situation in general. And with the new chief executive, people are hoping for a lot of changes.
Well, there's obviously a near-term and long-term prospect for Hong Kong. In the near term, so is Hong Kong open for business again? And the long term, so do you think Hong Kong will maintain its global competitiveness, as a financial center?
Yeah, in the short term, certainly, Hong Kong will gradually open for business. Already, domestically or locally here in Hong Kong, a lot of restrictions, that because of the pandemic previously have been uplifted, and there's much more allowance for social activities and so on. And so in general, local businesses are already seeing a bit of an upturn. In general, Hong Kong's situation in the world, in particular its position as a financial center, cannot be separated with what's going on in the rest of the world. two things. One is the macroeconomic situation in the globe. Second is with respect to the Chinese mainland. And I say that for both cases, Hong Kong's position as an international financial center will continue to be very critical, not only for Hong Kong itself, but also for the Chinese mainland, as well as globally, because I think with the turbulence in the rest of the world actually needs a very stable financial center outside of the West, or in conjunction with those in the West. And Hong Kong is a very, very good alternative compared to the other financial centers in the West. So I would expect Hong Kong will continue to thrive as a financial center, but hopefully the rest of the Hong Kong economy will also catch up.
Well, exactly. When we talk about optimism or the prospect of Hong Kong, we have to connect that to the prospect to the rest of the world, the mainland and the global economic challenges over there. And as a CEO of the major consulting company, so what are your suggestions for businesses in Hong Kong, in particular small and medium-sized companies, firms, how they are going to weather through this quite, I would say, challenging period of time?
Right. I will comment quickly on both the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, but also for the large businesses, because my clients cover both. I say for the SMEs, they have been hit quite a bit because of the pandemic, and also, as I mentioned, the social unrest before that. The Hong Kong government have done a pretty good job actually in providing some degree of financial support to really help the SMEs to weather through the very difficult situation. But nonetheless, many of the SMEs have suffered. I would say that now with the recovery, so gradual recovery of the Hong Kong economic situation, many of the SMEs are beginning to see the upturn in the business as well. But it's going to take time, and also some of the not every business will recover. But I say my general advice for the SME is, you need to be careful about the downside, and therefore try to minimize your fixed costs and turn things more flexibly, and to take advantage of the new opportunities and new policies that's going to be provided by the Hong Kong government as well as the Chinese mainland government to Hong Kong. For the big businesses, I say that as Mr. John Lee has already talked about, one of his priority is really try to address the housing problem, and the housing problem is a very deep-rooted issue, and many large businesses are involved in the housing business and also the land supply and so on. I would suggest that the large businesses look at the bigger picture, not only looking at the financial returns for itself, but also looking at the bigger picture and try to really work with the Hong Kong government to try to revive the entire Hong Kong society and the economy, addressing some of these most deep-rooted issues. So that would be my advice to businesses on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Edward, tell us probably in a little bit more detail about this prospect, the Great Bay Area, created for the young people in Hong Kong. What kind of opportunities the Great Bay Area offers to those young people?
Yeah, on the mainland side, the Greater Bay Area, i.e. the 9 cities in Guangdong province, it includes Shenzhen, Guangzhou, and other cities as well. Over the last 3 decades, these cities have grown, very, very fast, in particular in the areas of technology and manufacturing. These are the areas that Hong Kong youth have not been really exposed to. And Hong Kong youth are usually just very focused locally here in Hong Kong. But unfortunately, the industrial base in Hong Kong has been reduced. So providing opportunity for the Hong Kong youth through the Greater Bay Area opportunities in technology, in innovation, in manufacturing would create a lot more opportunities for the young people to either work in large companies in these kind of tech sectors, or they go and try their own startups and try their opportunities. Many of the young people on the mainland have been been very successful in creating entrepreneurial opportunities. Hong Kong young people are very smart, they are capable. It's just the willingness to get exposed to these new ideas across the border and be willing to embed themselves into the local ecosystem so they can benefit from the growth of these kind of opportunities on the mainland side of the Greater Bay Area.
Well, John Lee has, acknowledged the problems in Hong Kong, and he promised to win back the trust of the public, and by adopting a results-oriented governing style. So, what do you see for this his administration? How different is it probably from previous administration?
I think many of the Hong Kong people have been frustrated by the fact that many of the practices within the current and perhaps even previous Hong Kong administration has been to follow processes or procedures. And on one hand, that's very good. That's a sign of a good administration system, is that everything you have a very clear and very logical and step-by-step process. However, many of the processes has been built up over the years. And in many cases, a lot of redundancies has been put into the process design. So at some point, when you look at the entire picture and you look at all the processes and you say, why do we need to go through all these processes where there's so much redundancies or very a lot of duplicates, and you're really not addressing issues as fast as we could, given in particular that the world is changing so rapidly. And then Hong Kong people, we need to make decisions quickly. And so Mr. John Lee's, slogan that, he would like to be results oriented is an aim to try to address this bureaucracy in process management so far in the Hong Kong administration. And it remains to be seen how he's going to be dealing with it. But he already talked about this in his manifesto that, for example, in the housing arena, he would like to cut a lot of the red tapes and to accelerate the process so that people who are waiting for public housing can get to the public housing much faster. So let's see how it goes. But I think that idea is, the result orientation idea is what Hong Kong would need actually in the next several years.
Obviously, as we said, we are talking about the economy, but economy also related to politics. For example, this Hong Kong style democracy, and the purpose is to ensure stability, prosperity, and that's important to the business development. But at the same time, you want to bring the people with different ideas who probably disagree with the government. You want to narrow the gap of the division in the society and be representative of all the people of Hong Kong. So are you confident of that the government will represent all the people of Hong Kong?
So far, the signs are good. Actually, the fact that Mr. John Lee get a lot of widespread support, not only from the people in the election committee, but also I say in general in the mass public in Hong Kong, is a good sign. And I can see how his administration will work very closely with the legislature in Hong Kong to try to push things along. As you said correctly, it would also be good for a certain degree of check and balance in the system as well. I don't think it would be good for Hong Kong to have a legislative council who just say yes to everything that the administration would propose. It would be good to have a good relationship, but not good to be a yes man or yes person to the administration. So I hope there will be a certain degree of check and balance through the legislative council to the administration. Let's hope that's the case. But so far, I think Mr. John Lee has received very popular support from the people, from the general public in Hong Kong so far.
Well, it's good to see the new administration in Hong Kong, with growing confidence in the city there. Thank you, Edward. Thank you for speaking with us. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks again to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.